I've never had a time in my professional life where Americans have been more concerned about their own self-protection. Okay, we're going to part 3 of my interview with firearms expert, former SEAL team member and Tier 1 dev group member, Bill Rapier, Amtac Training and Amtac Blades. Just outstanding information that we've been getting so far. In this one, we talk about the idea of, hey, Bill, did you, I asked him if whether or not he has, he came into Buds originally with a lot of big firearm background. And you're going to find out that nope, that wasn't the case. And this is what he did. And this is how he trains. And then we talk about how people make decisions, the idea that you have to think about this stuff ahead of time. Bill has a really interesting take on how to do that. And then we talk, again, some more, straightforward gun stuff, why he is preferring to train clients on red dots now, what type of red dot you want to get, all of that. So it's just outstanding. So I hope you really enjoy this. This is part 3 of my interview with Bill Rapier of Amtac Blades and Amtac Training. I got 2 more questions. One just is interesting. When you went into training into Buds originally and stuff, did you come with a big firearms background, or is that something like what was your? I mean, I know you lived in some fairly rural areas, where maybe some firearms was trained, but what was your background?
No, I would say my background was very, I mean, we had firearms growing up. I did a little bit of hunting when we lived in Africa. We had firearms both there and then stateside. But it was very much like, now I would look at it as an untrained guy, because what I would do is, I mean, as a teenager, I had the permission slip from my parents to because I had a rifle and a pistol in the back, and and I'd go to the local range, out up on Rampart Range Road in Colorado Springs. There used to be just like a public area where you could shoot, and it was all just open. And so I'd get a permission slip from my folks. I'd go up there and just blast away. And I would not consider that training anymore. What I was doing, it's what most people think of when they think training. And I was safe with, mostly safe, not safe to the level that I am now, but, mostly safe with my firearms back then. But it was totally different from now. Hey, when I'm going to the range, I'm going to go, I'm always starting off with some sort of a cold bore drill, like how, whether it's, shooting B8s at 25 or just doing a single draw stroke at 7 or 10 and trying to make a credit card shot. Like what's that first? Okay, I've been off my guns for, a week or 5 days or whatever. Like where am I at?
Right.
And then I'll go through some sort of warm-up procedure where I'm going to do some draw strokes. I'm going to do some strong hand only shooting, some other strong hand only shooting. I'm doing tack reloads every couple drills. When I run out of bullets, I'm doing combat reloads. I might do some get off the X drill. I might do a little bit of shooting and moving, like all those things I'm doing within 1 or 2 loadouts. So that would be 3 to 6 standard capacity magazines. And then I'm going to pick 1 or 2 things that I actually want to get better at. So, okay, I want to work on just strict accuracy. So I'd go back and just shoot 25-yard bulls and just shoot that over and over again. Or I want to just work on, 5-yard credit card shots as fast as I can do it. Right. Okay, so we're going to work that. Pick 1 or 2 things, work on those things, and then always end, or at least for my recommendation, is always end with slowing fire. Because especially if you're doing high volume stuff, right? We all start building in a little bit of that premature recoil management, also known as flinching. Yeah. Because when you're shooting fast and you're shooting up close, you can get away with doing it. Yeah. So I like to end with always end on a win. So if I go back and I'm going to shoot, so I've got on our range, I got some 5x5 squares. I might go to 25, and okay, I'm going to end with a couple. If I miss, then that wasn't actually my last shot. Right. I'll put 1 more bullet in and send it again. Always make sure that I end on a win for some slowing fire. And then a lot of times I'll even dry fire a little bit afterwards, just because the next time you pull the pistol out, you want everything to be perfect, because it might be for real. It might be to save someone's, a loved one's life. So better make sure that it's right when you put your tools up, or when you put your real bullets back in, you know, whatever it is for you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was great. And it kind of leads into the next thing. So on my channel, I've interviewed former head of the Aryan Brotherhood, or interviewed former mob bosses, guys that are very familiar with violence, some spec ops guys. Obviously, these individuals are comfortable with violence. They talk in a very straightforward manner, and it's, you know, really, really good. You're unique in the fact that you have a very strong faith, and I mean, even your Amtac logo has the cross on it, which is fantastic. You're very open about it. One of the biggest questions I get from people, you know, people who just aren't familiar with violence, that are worried, especially in the last year, you know, year and a half, we've had, you know, all these new gun owners, all these new people have approached me that never would have bought a gun in the past, and it's just amazing. But the question all comes down to it is, how does a good ethical person rectify using lethal force? Because for a lot of them, you know, stuff that's obvious to people who do this is not obvious to them. And do you have any insight for people, like, especially, you know, I have a lot of, it's so funny, I've trained a ton of not mercenaries, well, those guys too, but missionaries. And it's really interesting, especially, I don't think people really realize how dangerous it is in some countries for missionaries.
Oh, for sure.
But it's interesting talking to missionaries that are familiar with violence, you know, violent areas and stuff. It's ethically, you know, having those discussions with them is very interesting. But do you have any ideas on how to approach that subject?
Absolutely. So first off, I am a Christian, Christ follower, most important thing in my life. So my whole worldview, how I'm going to approach, you know, the answer to this question, you know, ethically committing violence, is all going to, that is my worldview. It's all going to be, the truth is coming from the Bible within this. It's something that I've definitely gotten more serious about over the years, just because I have this platform now. And I mean, I speak about violence every time I teach a class. I do a mindset talk at the end. We talk about violence. We talk about the ethics of violence. And so I have to make sure that I'm saying the right stuff. And honestly, in the past, I never thought anything of it, you know, in part, and it was very clear to me. Like I never, you know, being brought up in a Judeo-Christian household, it was always, hey, there's a difference between murder and between killing in battle, or killing to protect yourself. It's one of the questions that I will ask people during a mindset talk is, hey, you know, there's this book that has a set of rules, has 10 rules in it, and one of them is thou shalt not kill. And, you know, so I'll bring that up, and the reality is that's the King James version that translated it as thou shalt not kill. The ancient Hebrews had different words for killing, just like we have words for manslaughter nowadays and different degrees of manslaughter. The word that is used is overwhelmingly used in terms of murdering people, not in terms of killing in battle.
Right.
I actually, when I was getting interviewed for going to selection, this was kind of funny. The psych, you know, I'm sitting in a horseshoe, you know, in the middle of a horseshoe table configuration, and, you know, all these senior SEALs, and then there's
no pressure,
you know, a doctor, and there's a psychologist there as well. And the psych goes, now you say here that you're a religious guy, and those were his words, not mine. But you're, you know, and so he brings up the whole, you know, thou shalt not kill thing in the Bible. And he goes, well, you're interviewing to come to a place where you might ask to kill. And how do you reconcile those things? And I said, well, you know, the Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart, and he killed so many people, they made songs about him. Right. I mean, it talks about Saul is slain his thousands and David is tens of thousands. And that's what the people like sang like as David was moving among them. I mean, but he was, and yet still he was a man after God's own heart. Contrast that with when David murdered Uriah. That was, that was obviously a very grievous sin. And he repented of doing that. I mean, David screwed a lot of stuff up, but killing in battle was not one of those things. Now, the flip side of that is, and this is where I think I was in error, was taking it a little bit too nonchalantly. Like I never felt bad about it. I never was, it was like, oh, I was maybe too much on the side of, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like we did the right thing. High fives all the way around. Like, good job, guys. But God takes the shedding of blood very seriously. I mean, David didn't build the temple. His son built the temple because David had so much blood on his hands. So I do think it's a very serious thing, right? You were ending someone's life. So it's not something that should be approached lightly. It is a very serious thing, but just because it's serious doesn't mean that it's wrong. And this is, this really gets to the heart of willingness, as your personal willingness is. If you don't think this through, if you think that it's wrong ethically to kill someone in defense of your life or a family member's life or some other, random person's life in your community, if you think that that's wrong, that could lead to hesitation. And then that hesitation can lead to regret, either by you doing something that you shouldn't have done, right? Getting angry and doing something that you wouldn't have done if you would have thought about it all the way, or by not doing something that you could have done if you would have thought about it ahead of time and gone, oh man, if this happens, I should probably do this, right, instead of having to try and think through it. So yeah, that would be my, and then that would be my recommendation is look at what the Bible says, because there definitely is a difference between murder, murder being you're either angry with someone or you want their stuff, and therefore you kill them, versus, hey, you broke into my house to try and hurt my family, or the soldiering aspect of that is we're just projecting that to, we're going to go do violence to them downrange so that we're not having to do violence to them in our own country.
Exactly.
To try and keep the fight downrange. So yeah, it's a really, really important thing. That's another thing that I think is probably within the firearms community, within guys that train. I think personal willingness is one of the least talked about things. What are you willing to do under what circumstances, when, like all those things, and you need to think about those when you're warm and dry and rational. Yeah. Not when you just sprinted and your kid is screaming and you see blood, and that's not when you want to try and think through what is the correct response to this. And again, the only way we get there is, we have to think this stuff through, and then we've got to train to get to the point where, we have trained through some of these scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's excellent, because I think quite frankly, that's a barrier people put in themselves that's unnecessary. Meaning you can be ethical, it can be a very ethical thing, and in the right context, and when you put the thought in, and that's the most important part, is you have to think about this ahead of time, and in the right environment when you're rational. But giving guidance like that, like you just gave, is going to be really helpful to a lot of people. Well, like I said, I respect your time, so I don't want to go too far. But here's the last thing I'd like to ask you. I got a lot of people in here. I got some people that are really competent. They jump right into one of your classes right now. What about the people that literally they are the brand new people? They would love to earn the right to be able to attend your class, meaning to have the basic competency. This is something that a lot of times when I talk to guys that do courses like you, that you can't just necessarily jump into if you're brand new. Where would you tell somebody to go train? What would you like to see out of somebody? You got the physical fitness down. We already talked about that. But from a manipulation standpoint of, say, the pistol or the carbine, what would you like to see them do? And do you have any recommendations on where they could go for that type of training?
So having quality equipment is huge. If I take two brand new people, and one guy has a a modern pistol with a Kydex holster, and the other guy has his daddy's 1911 and an old leather holster.
Right.
Like the amount of progress that the guy that's shooting a pistol from this century will like, he will make way more progress than the guy that's shooting an antique. And not that, 1911 is a great platform, and there's some some updated ones that are they're good, but it's especially the holster. If guys don't have good holsters, it can actually cause, it can be unsafe with some of the holster designs that are out there. So I would just encourage guys, if, any of the guys that, go train with Kyle, go do any of the stuff with Sack or Atienza, with those guys. Almost every area has their local guys, their local range guys that you can get some level of training from. Do that to the point where you can, you understand and you can live the fundamental rules of firearm safety, and you can safely draw and reholster your pistol. That's really that's the main thing that I want out of someone. Like, we will work the accuracy piece, we'll work, clean, the clean manipulations, all that stuff we can work. But if I have to babysit a guy that's, that's not muzzle aware, right. Because if someone's not muzzle aware in a class, like, it's one of the big things that will get someone kicked out of a class, which I've actually never kicked anyone out of a class. I've almost kicked someone out for not being muzzle aware, repeatedly, not being muzzle aware. Yeah. So you need to be muzzle aware, right? Treat the end of your pistol, you should treat it like there is a laser beam lightsaber that goes to infinity that's coming out of that guy. And don't sweep people with it, and then same thing with your trigger finger is it's on the trigger when you're doing business. And then as soon as you are done doing business, straight finger, it gets grounded just below the slide, and then you come off. And I don't start to come off target with my finger on trigger still. I go straight finger, it gets grounded, and then the gun comes off. So just being those little things, being deliberate right there, that's really what I want. Because if I have 14 guys on the line that have that, we can work. we can progress a lot better.
Right. And hey, the other question that somebody wanted to know was, you've I won't say recently, but you've made a big push to incorporate red dots
yes.
in pistol training. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's all sorts of controversy about that type of things, but I've noticed more and more people that I respect are really coming over to the red dot. What's your thought process on that, and why do you encourage that in some states, in some cases?
So I'm running now. So the pistol that I everyday carry now is a Walter PDP. It's a full size 4.5 inch. I'm currently running a 509T on it and a Surefire X300V for the light. I do recommend that you always have light on your pistols as well. My progress on the dot. So I set my first dot gun up in prep for a night vision class, and I actually set a couple of them up because I wanted to give students some options. I was not really happy with the Type 1 RMRs. It would shut itself off and flicker, and cause some issues. Also, they're getting water in it, and then you can't. I mean, the first time I taught with it was in Washington State, and it was like 39 degrees and rain for 2 days. Yeah. And there was times when my, and all my stuff is from concealment. So the window on that RMR was so fogged up, I couldn't even see my iron sights through it. And then there'd be other times where there was so much water that I didn't have a dot. I had 5 dots because it was diffusing, and then also part of it was just a training thing. And part of it was I thought it would slow me down and too much for, what's generally pistols are used up close and personal. So do you need that increased capability and accuracy? So I was kind of, so for all those things, the issues I was having with the RMRs, and then I was shooting them a little bit slower. And so I was definitely a late adopter. I would say the guy that had the biggest influence on me running one was Bill Blowers. I've taught with him a couple times now, respect him. And, I asked him some questions on it, and I just saw more and more guys were running it. So I was like, okay. So about 2 years ago, I decided I'm going to put it was an acro at the time. So that was another part of it is, I live up in North Idaho. So we get rain and snow all the time. And so when the acro first came out, that was the first one that had an enclosed emitter. So what that means is rain doesn't shut the thing down, or it doesn't cause it to diffuse, and also it doesn't fog up nearly to the level that a single piece of glass or a single piece of, whatever they're using for that will fog up. So I put one on a pistol, and now all of my pistols have dots on them, because basically, I mean, the bottom line is I think it really makes shooting about 50% easier. Because generally when you're shooting, you have to, as a new shooter, you have to understand sight alignment. You have to understand your aiming point, right? So not just, on most pistols, it's not the bright orange or the green or the white circle. It's the top of your front sight is actually your aiming point. You have to know your sight alignment. And then you superimpose your front sight on the target. You stare at your front sight like your life depends on it. You slowly squeeze the trigger. Of those things, the trigger squeeze is the hardest. And then next would be keeping your concentration on your front sight. When you shoot with a dot, you take away sight alignment and staring at your front sight. You superimpose the dot on what you want to shoot, and then you focus on squeezing the trigger. So it really makes it so much easier to do that. Now, some of the stuff that I've worked through, I talked about those different distances where, the natural point of aim distance, the backplating distance. So on some of those stuff was, now I would fit it into those categories. If I have to make a close-up shot, it doesn't matter if I see the dot or not. I'm going to backplate with my window. If I see the dot, great. If I don't see the dot until recoil, that's fine as well. Because I'm making the shot within the backplated distance. The one thing that so I dry fire every morning, just for a minute or 2 minutes. I'll do standard presentations first, but then one of the harder things with the dot is non-standard presentations. So as part of my dry fire ritual every morning, with a triple checked, cleared firearm, pointed in a safe direction, I'll stand 180 degrees to where my target is, and I will keep my feet planted, and I'll look over my shoulder, and then I'll draw and make a shot, over my shoulder this way, over my shoulder this way, for those weird non-standard presentations. Because it's really easy after a while. If you're just coming in here, you'll find your dot every time.
Right.
But it's, what if you have to make a shot like this out of your car, or rear towards the right rear seat in your vehicle, something like that. I'll do sometime, not every day, but from time to time, I'll draw, and then I'll go underneath the table or underneath a chair. So it's just a weird angles that you don't normally do. And so when doing that, I always recommend present your pistol like you're presenting for your iron sights. Because when you do that, your dot's going to be there. If you're hunting for your iron sights on your presentation and you present properly, that dot is going to be there. And if the dot's not there because it died on you, okay, well, you shoot your irons like normal. It should not, it should not slow you down. And so yeah, and even like shooting with kids now, as I'm teaching my kids, I try and get them on dot guns as soon as possible, because it's just simpler. It's easier. They don't have to focus on as much. They don't have to stare at their front sight. So if so the old school guys will go, well, you should learn how to shoot iron sights first. And I agree. You should learn, if you're a professional, you should be able to shoot iron sights as well. But if our goal is to really make someone as capable as quickly as possible, that is my goal when teaching good Americans, Why would you start with something that's going to be harder for them to do?
Right.
Right. So I would recommend, go ahead and start. I do recommend closed emitter over an open emitter, especially if you live in a state where it rains and snows. Also, if your gun takes a tumble in the mud, with a, good luck wiping that out of any of the open emitter type, wiping that little window out enough. Whereas any of the enclosed emitters, you just, wipe the lenses off and you keep shooting.
Going. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, hey, I really, really appreciate your time. This was super helpful. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of follow-up questions for people. They're gonna have all your contact information on that. One thing I just wanted to ask, just because of the the situation we're in right now with supply chains, as far as your blades and everything in order and all of that, is there back orders? Is it?
Yeah, so you can back order right now. We have everything we have is in stock. We're looking at February shipping right now.
Okay.
But everything is orderable right now.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, Bill, thanks for your time, man. Really, really appreciate it. Look forward to hopefully meeting you in the near future.
Hopefully I'll make it out there here one of these days.
Yeah, it'd be nice, man. But hey, thanks for your time. Yeah. All right, that concludes my 3-part series with Bill Rapier of Amtac Security and Amtac Blades. Please go out and support Bill. Get in line to get one of his knives. They're great. And again, if you can look at his training schedule and get in while you can, because this guy is absolutely outstanding. Make sure that you are ready to have a real training day, but you are going to absolutely know how to use your firearm to protect you and your family much better after going through a course with Bill. Again, I'm very thankful that he took the time. A guy with 7 kids and a training schedule that he has, that was really nice of him to set it aside. And also, I hope you guys realize the interaction with some of the other instructors that we've had on here, Tom Kyer and the late Frank Wendell. Frank helped Bill originally design the blades that became Amtac Blades. And these guys, their synergistic training is really good. So I just wanted you to see kind of the connection of some of the people in the series. And again, what's the other interesting part? These guys are all training top units, top people. And when they do train civilians, they train them in a very realistic manner. So again, I hope you appreciate that. Now listen, if you want to start putting your self-protection strategy together, if you like what you hear on these interviews, go to timlarkin.com, give us your email, sign up, get your free masterclass. Also, please support the channel. Subscribe, have your friends subscribe, share videos, make comments. All that stuff really helps us as we grow. Until next time, though, stay safe.